evening, New York. You are listening to Human Services News and Views, presented by the Human Services Council, where we discuss the issues, policies, and politics impacting human services programs in New York. I'm your host, Allison Sesso, Executive Director of the Human Services Council, co-hosting with Michelle Jackson, and we are the voice of the human services sector. For more information about the Human Services Council, visit our webpage at humanservicescouncil.org or find us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter at HSCC_NY. Tonight's show will include an interview with Lilian Barrios Paoli, New York City's Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, and Rhea Wong, Executive Director of Breakthrough New York, a 6-year college access program committed to getting high-potential low-income students to 4-year colleges.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. And can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Breakthrough New York?
Absolutely. Breakthrough New York is a college success program, and we really believe that access changes everything. So what do I mean by that? We identify high-potential, low-income middle school students in 6th grade throughout the city, in all of the boroughs, and we support them for actually 10 years to and through college through academic preparation, guidance. We provide everything that they need in order to be college ready. And the other aspect of our program that is pretty unique is that we hire high school and college students to teach, thereby seeding the field for future educators.
Oh, that's great. And 10 years is a really long time to
10 years is a really
That's
long
great.
time. Yeah, so it's definitely a commitment. And so what's really remarkable about these young kids is we meet them when they're 11 or 12 years old. Mm-hmm. We recruit at middle schools throughout the city, and we actually speak to kids first so that we can identify kids who have the wherewithal to apply to a program. And you know, to say a 10-year commitment to an 11-year-old is a pretty daunting prospect. And, you know, obviously we're looking for a very unique, motivated kid who is really excited about the prospect of going to college and who would sign on for a 10-year commitment.
Wow. Yeah, and you were actually a student at the original Breakthrough site in San Francisco. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with Breakthrough? Obviously, it was great experience for you. You're now heading it in New York.
Obviously, it was a life-changing experience for me. Mm-hmm. So we, as you mentioned, we are a national organization. We were first started in San Francisco, and we have about 30 affiliates around the country, though we are the only site in New York. And as a middle school kid, I think my experience is very common to a lot of our Breakthrough kids, which is that I was going to, a fairly mediocre public school. I wasn't terribly challenged. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily have a peer group that was as motivated to go to college as I was. Mm-hmm. And by joining the Breakthrough program, I was really able to meet folks who were like me, who were inspired to go to college, and also was really academically challenged for the first time in my life. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I ended up, a world of access and opportunity opened up for me. I ended up going to boarding school. I've lived abroad. I've been engaged in really meaningful community service activities. And I, more than anything, fell in love with education and the idea that I really wanted to devote my life to giving back to this program because it gave me so much, and that every kid should have the opportunities that I had.
That's really great. And I often find with nonprofits people who go through the programs when they work or volunteer, for the next generation is so crucial, whether it's from, a homeless shelter to something like this. I think having people who go through the program is such an inspiration. So it's really great to see you in this role.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's obviously a very personal mission for me, and what I think I bring to the table, which is pretty unique as an executive director, is I can really see myself through the eyes of the kids that we serve, because I was one of the kids.
Right. Absolutely. And a crucial part of Breakthrough's program, especially in New York, is helping students get into college prep high schools, which then prepare them for college admission and success. And I have to say, the idea of preparing for college now completely in all 4 years of high school, having to kind of compete just to get into a high school that will prepare you for college is really daunting. And it seems like it's really getting harder and harder to get on a college path. Like the expectations keep moving back to younger years. And then now, especially when we see poverty rates rising and less resources for public schools, it's really a daunting process. So what can, the Department of Education, or really the school system itself, do to help make the city's college prep schools more accessible to low-income students, particularly those from Black and Latino communities?
Well, Michelle, I think you really hit the nail on the head, which is that it does start earlier and earlier. And so I can't stress enough the importance of early education and awareness, particularly in communities of color. So just as an example, a lot of families don't know that when you're in 8th grade and applying to high schools, the most competitive high schools will look at your grades in 7th grade and look at your attendance record in 7th grade. Well, if you didn't know that and you get to 8th grade, it's too late to go. You can't go back in time, unfortunately. And so I think part of it is letting folks know early enough that what the criteria and the process really are for the most competitive schools in the city, and also to disseminate information about what makes a college prep high school a college prep high school. And often that information is not terribly easy to find. The process is incredibly complicated. I mean, there have been tons of stories done about navigating that process. And I think just overall, obviously, it would be great if we had more college prep high schools in New York that kids could attend, so that it doesn't become a scarcity issue and that, in fact, all high schools are college preparatory. But until that happens, I think early and often awareness is the key.
Yeah, I can't imagine, when I was in 6th or 7th grade, having to think about college that early just seems like really crazy. And especially when you think about people from low-income communities in New York in particular, that there's, their parents have language access issues or they're a single parent and working long hours. And, I know I came from a 2-parent household and my mom really just wanted to make sure I had my lunch every day, when I was in 5th grade, not worrying about, my grades and attendance to get me into college that early. So it's great that there's a program out there that will help find out these issues and really help share it with the community. And I definitely think more should be done in that area so that people have access. Yeah.
Well, I think there's been some work in that area. There's been certainly some progress made. I think offering, for example, free test preparation is a great first step. However, I think that, as you said, again, the earlier the better. So just as an example, offering test preparation in the 7th and 8th grade really won't move the dial as much as offering it starting in the 5th grade. So what we're seeing is a lot of Chinese and Bengali kids, as an example, starting to do test prep in the 5th grade for the Sci-Highs, the Stuyvesants, the Bronx Science, and so on. And, one thing that we say at Breaking New York is you don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, a lot of these communities simply just don't know what it takes and what the process is to get into the most competitive schools.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this year you also launched a new college persistence program, which helps to provide support to your students from the time they choose their college through the end of their freshman year at college. And really, what kind of support are you providing to those students?
It's interesting, Michelle. We actually just made a commitment to support our kids throughout all 4 years of college. So that's where the 10 years of support comes in. So it's in the first year, so we're still learning a lot. I think we've run up against a couple of different issues. First is that, a lot of our kids do need some help in terms of adjusting to collegiate level work. Because even if they're going to the most competitive high schools in the city and outside of the city, I think handling a college course load is certainly a different beast. So part of it is helping to connect our kids to resources on their campuses, such as the writing center or the tutoring center, or going to professor office hours, because a lot of our kids don't necessarily know that that's what you're supposed to do, and they're not coming from families that have the experience of having gone to college who can advise them. We certainly have financial issues that we run up against. So just as an example, our kids don't know that there is a reimbursement process that comes with their financial aid package to cover items like books or other supplies that they need. They may not necessarily know how to open a bank account or a checking account. So, I mean, we sort of have a myriad of different types of issues. As we progress, though, I really think that we are going to be focused a lot on helping our kids to navigate so that they're choosing majors that are right for them, and also position them to be competitive in the workforce, because ultimately our goal is that they graduate from college and break cycles of poverty in their families. And I think obviously part of that is making sure that they're career ready as well as college ready.
Right, absolutely. And I think what I mentioned this, but I think what's really unique about Breakthrough is this 10-year, that you're following people for. So a lot of nonprofits don't have the ability, aka the funding, to really pursue kind of not just like the goal of, summer youth employment or, whatever, workforce study, whatever across the myriad of human services. They're able to provide like one service, and you're not able to then follow up with them. So, people can get kids into college, but being able to follow them through that experience, because like you said, there's so many things if they don't have either peers or family members who can help navigate the college system because they haven't done it themselves. There's so many financial aid or, like there's just support and kind of the therapy needed when you're experiencing like a college life versus living at home. There's so many of those little things that can really hinder all the work that you've done. And so to be able to follow them throughout the experience is really incredible.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Michelle, this is a fairly recent commitment from us, not because we didn't want to, but just as you point out, resources are limited for sure. I think as an organization, we really settled on the strategy of going deep as opposed to broad. I mean, certainly we are broadening our reach by opening a third site in the Bronx, which I know we'll talk about shortly, but I mean, I think just as a leader and as the head of this particular organization that we really believe that relationships matter, and they certainly do over the long term, and particularly when we think about the trajectory of a person from the age of 11 to 21, there's so much change that happens and so many critical decision points that really determine the trajectory of a person's life. And I think it's critical that we're there for them because we know that they have the potential. We know they have this raw talent to be successful. It's just a question of making sure that they're making the right decisions along the way.
Right, absolutely. And unfortunately, we're out of time, but I do want to mention that you're opening your third location, the New York Junior Tennis and Learnings brand. And it's a bunch of names. So at the Carrie Leeds Center for Tennis and Learning in the South Bronx. And can you just give everyone your website so that they could learn more about that and all of Breakthrough's program?
It's BTNY.org.
Great. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and for doing incredible work at Breakthrough.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
You too. And I want to thank all our guests tonight and remind our audience that if you work, volunteer, or support a nonprofit human services organization in New York, make sure they're members of HSC. You can find out more about HSC and support us by donating through our website at humanservicescouncil.org. Join us next Thursday at 6 p.m. for more human services news and views.